Roguelike games, the most underrated genre in gaming. Infinite replayability, brutal difficulty, always with the promise of one more run. But recently, I've been thinking, are these games actually impossible, or are we just being scammed? So today, I'm putting 5 impossible roguelikes to the ultimate test. First up, Balatro. Released on February 20th, 2024, Balatro is the roguelike that somehow took poker, one of the slowest, most boring games ever created, and transformed it into a chaotic, brain-melting, dopamine-fueled strategy machine. And I fucking love it. On the surface, Balatro looks simple. You build poker hands, beat blinds, climb stakes, repeat. But that simplicity is a lie, because the moment you unlock your first jokers, the game becomes something completely different. You've got jokers that multiply your score into the thousands, joker that change your entire playstyle, jokers that twist your run into some ridiculous high score science experiment, and jokers so powerful they literally break the game's intended rules. Every single run starts with a tiny idea, and then suddenly snowballs into this monstrous build where you're doing 900 million score with a single hand. It's a perfect combination of luck, planning, and pure strategy, which is exactly why Balatro exploded into one of the most addictive roguelikes ever made. But the big question is, how hard is it really? Well, Balatro has layers, and the first layer, honestly, is confusing as hell. You're thrown into common, uncommon, rare, legendary jokers, 1.5 times mult when held in hand, re-trigger first paid card, planets card, spectral card, stakes that change the rules every run. Now, if you don't know what any of that means, the first few hours will feel like trying to learn a new language while someone's slapping you in the side of your face every 20 seconds. But once it clicks, once you finally understand what all the synergy systems do, you beat your first run. Congratulations. Now, what are you rewarded with? A pure addiction. You beat white stake. Cool, well done. Now do gold. Every time you think you're done, the game hands you something else to chase. Then you unlock another deck. Then you want to get gold in that. Then another, and process repeats for infinity pretty much. Balatro doesn't want you to finish it. It wants you to obsess over it. And then we hit the real endgame, endless mode. This is where you start hearing the word nan-F. The score beyond the game's display limit. The holy grail of Balatro. The sign that you've officially broke the game. And while yes, people have hit nan-F before, me, after way too many hours on way too many different systems, I still haven't even seen it. So how hard is Balatro? Well, it depends on what you consider beating the game. Beating your first run? Pretty easy. Completing every stake up to gold? Very challenging, but very doable as well. Breaking the score limit and achieving nan-F, even consistently? That's where you basically have to become a Balatro Grandmaster. And for the average player, might be impossible. So for this tier list, if we're talking about what it takes to truly beat the game at its highest level, Balatro is an absolutely impossible tier roguelike. The next up is a roguelike a lot of people claim is 100 times harder than Balatro, but I disagree, because now we're moving into eldenringnightreign. Releasing on May 30th, 2025, eldenringnightreign is a bold and ambitious spin-off of a game you may have heard of before. Elden Ring. I bought this on release day expecting to struggle a lot. And yeah, my first few runs I got absolutely destroyed. But after around 5 attempts, you start to understand how the game really is. In Nightrain, you spawn into a world that changes every single time you load in. New layouts, new bosses, new loot. And while there are definitely patterns, most areas given the exact same loot or bosses, the overall loop stays fresh for about 40 hours. For me personally, that was enough time to beat the entire game in about 40 to 50 hours of game time. The structure is very simple, but definitely stressful. Survive 3 nights, and then you face one of the final bosses. Some are way harder than others, but they all hit like a train, have unpredictable moves, and punish you even for the smallest mistake. And the worst part, if you and your team wipe, you're back at the start. Load in, hope for good loot, and well, try again. This retry loop does not make Nightrain feel brutally hard, but it also means that if you get lucky enough to have teammates who don't abandon the game every 5 minutes, and you actually coordinate across the 3 nights, the difficulty drops pretty fast. With the right squad, you'll hit level 15, get top tier weapons, and absolutely melt the final boss. So where does that leave Nightrain? Don't get me wrong, it's very challenging at the start, but once you understand the abilities, weapons, synergies, and boss patterns, and especially once you run with a decent squad, it becomes definitely manageable. For me personally, that means Nightrain goes below Balatro, staying very solid in the very hard tier. Now next is known as the best roguelike game ever made, but also one of the hardest. But is that true? Let's find out. Dead Cells. Released on August 7th, 2018, Dead Cells is one of the purest, cleanest, most refined roguelikes ever created. And unlike Nightrain or Balatro, this game doesn't ease you into the pain. It throws you off a cliff. I'll keep it short and simple for you. Dead Cells is not only a masterpiece, but easily one of the hardest games out there. As its core, Dead Cells is a combat-first roguelike with a simple loop. Fight through biomes, collect weapons, skills, stat scrolls, beat bosses, die, repeat. But that simplicity is exactly why the game works so well. Every single run is fast, kinetic, and brutally punishing, but also fair. When you die in Dead Cells, you never blame the game. You blame your own two hands. And the addiction? Well, that comes from the weapons. Dead Cells has one of the most ridiculous arsenals in any game ever. Bleeding swords, whips, giant flaming hammers, crossbows the size of a small child, and my personal favorite, the big, stupid, heavy weapons. Also abilities that can literally wipe entire screens if you chain them properly. And then after that, you unlock aspects and mutations, which change the entire playstyle of a run. That's when Dead Cells really hooks you. But here's where things go from fun to straight up impossible. You beat the game once, congrats, that's a tutorial. Now add a boss cell. Elites spawn everywhere, enemies get new abilities, everything hits like a truck on steroids. By the time you reach 5 BC, even the tutorial enemies feel like mini bosses. And this difficulty isn't cheap, it's earned. The game expects you to learn animation timings, perfect parries, dodges, spacing, and route planning. It's basically a 2D Doom Eternal with permadeath. Now, how hard is Dead Cells really? Well, beating the game once is very doable. Well, you kind of get a warm hug at the start. You're told, well, yes, you will die, but each time you come back stronger and stronger. The game becomes a test of precision, focus, patience, and the ability to not throw your controller when you die with a legendary loadout 45 minutes in. I personally consider Dead Cells one of the purest examples of easy to start, impossible to master. So where does this land on the tier list? Dead Cells is definitely going up there. It's going to go right behind Balatro in the impossible tier. Pretty much for the exact same reason as Balatro. Very easy to start off, but literally nearly impossible to master. Now, while Dead Cells is a high skill, high action roguelike, this next one takes the genre in a completely different direction. On the surface, plateup looks like a cute, harmless cooking game. You pick a restaurant, make some meals, and try not to burn the place down. But after about 3 runs, you're suddenly in the kitchen like Carmy from The Bear, screaming, "Fuck off my expo chef now!" Because behind the adorable art style is one of the most mentally punishing, chaos-inducing, and team-destroying roguelikes ever made. Every day your restaurant gets harder. More customers, less time, more orders, and upgrades that can either save your entire run or brick your whole layout. And the real roguelike twist is the meta progression. Every failed run unlocks new dishes, new appliances, new cards, and in classic roguelike fashion, some of them feel like gifts from heaven, and others feel like the game personally hates you. But here's the secret to plateup. It looks like a casual party game, but once you understand blueprints, automation chains, dish synergies, customer flow, and kitchen optimization, you realize there are definitely levels to this. There are players who manually cook everything, and then there are psychopaths who build fully automated Michelin star factories, and that's where the difficulty hits. If you don't know how to build a good layout, manage cards properly, and use automation pieces right, you will lose fast. plateup isn't hard in the traditional sense, but if you want to reach overtime 15-20, you need strategy and enough teamwork to stop your friends from rage quitting mid-shift. So after all this, where does it land on the tier list? It's safe to say plateup isn't as hard as the other big 3, but it's a respectable hard tier. Now it's time for a game you were looking forward to the entire video. It's currently taking over the world. It's Megabonk. Releasing on September 18, 2025, Megabonk is one of those roguelikes that looks like a joke until it absolutely destroys you. On the surface, it's goofy, chaotic, almost stupid in the best way possible. But once you actually sit down and start playing, you realize this game is secretly one of the most demanding roguelikes ever made. The real challenge is control, because Megabonk gives you power and then punishes you for not being able to handle it. Once your build gets too strong, the screen becomes so chaotic you can barely understand what's happening. Most people never beat the hardest modifiers because the game becomes more about mental endurance than anything else. So where does Megabonk sit on the tier list? For me personally, it's not as impossible as Balatro's endgame or Nightraign's multi-day boss runs, but it is one of the few roguelikes where your biggest enemy isn't the game, it's your own ability. So with that said, I think Megabonk deserves to go into the very hard tier. Alright, after many hours of game time and writing this script, this is the final roguelike tier list. Balatro, the simple poker roguelike that melts your brain, sits at the top of impossible. Nightraigne, unbelievably chaotic at first but manageable once you understand the patterns. Very hard, but not quite as hard as Balatro. Dead Cells, sitting very comfortably behind Balatro in the impossible tier. plateup, the cute game that turns you into Gordon Ramsay at 3 AM, sitting in the hard tier. And finally, Megabonk, chaotic, weird, hilarious, but not exactly crushing, landing safely in the very hard tier as well. But here's the thing, the real ranking isn't about difficulty. It's about which of these games stick in your head long after you play it. Which one haunts you? Which one keeps you saying one more run? For me, it's definitely Balatro. If you disagree with any of these rankings, Good. It's what this entire genre is about. And if you want a full deep dive into Balatro and why it is so addictive, it might be coming pretty soon on this channel. Now, thank you guys for watching the entire video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.